Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. I have 2 cards and 2 tags for you in this video, and I'm using some fun new products. This is a Reverse Confetti pattern paper, and it's called Winter Solstice, and I just really love all of the different patterns in this. I'm just going to flip through and show you some of them. This one's got to be my favorite, and I'm going to start out with this one. I'm also using a new die from Simon Says Stamp. It's called Holiday Wreath Tag. Simon Says Stamp came out with a cute tag kit, and I was too slow to get that one. It sold out pretty fast, and this was included in it. But I found that I could buy this separate, and I love anything that has to do with wreaths. I ran it through my Sizzix Big Shot machine a couple of times just because it is such an intricate die. This cardstock I'm using is from MFT and it's called Green-Eyed Monster. It's one of my favorite colors. And I thought it matched really well with this piece of pattern paper that I'm using. This is a pretty quick card to put together, but I love the result. I'm also putting this piece of pattern paper onto another piece of the Green-Eyed Monster cardstock. I'm attaching this wreath with some liquid adhesive. I'm just putting little dots down so it doesn't seep through. And then I'm just going to put that on the upper part of my card. I'm going to double this just so the wreath looks nice and full. I put my acrylic block over the first wreath just to hold that down. And I don't want it to be exactly on top of the other wreath, so I kind of put it on a little askew. I cut out the bow with a piece of pink paper, but it kind of got lost on this wreath. So I'm going to try a red bow over it. I'm just going to double that. I think that looks pretty together. And then I can just glue that on top of my wreath. I'm using a small sentiment from my stash. It just says joy. And I'm going to cut that down and put it inside the wreath. I wanted the sentiment to be subtle, and I think it looks really cute just peeking out from the side of this wreath. For a finishing touch, I'm adding some pink Nouveau drops just around my wreath. That looks pretty subtle too. It blends in really well with the background paper, but I think the background paper is loud enough for this card. I'm also adding some clear glitter pen over this bow. And that finishes off my first card. Now I just need to set it somewhere to dry safely. On my second card, I'm going to use all 3 pieces of this tag die. So you've seen the wreath part, but now I'm going to use the actual tag part of the die. I'm going to snip off this piece of the die cut where you put the ribbon. I can't think of what that's called. And then you can't even tell it was there. Now for a little bit of heat embossing. I'm using my clear embossing pad. I want to completely coat my little wreath with this ink. And then I'm going to be using a new product to my craft room. This is some Brutus Monroe embossing powder. It's called Penny. I'm just using my fingers because I could not find my reverse tweezers. My desk was such a disaster, but I did stop the camera and find my tweezers, and it took a few minutes. I didn't want to burn myself with this heat tool. Once the powder has melted, it's such a beautiful copper color. I really love this embossing powder. I want to try some others from Brutus Monroe. And once this has melted, I'm going to coat it again. I really want it to look metallic. Before it has a chance to dry, I'm just going to dip that in the powder and heat it up again and melt it. If you wanted, you could just let it cool and then add more embossing ink on it and then pour more powder over it. That works too. but I just had this ready on my desk and it was easy just to dip into it. This double coating just makes it look a little more puffy too. It looks really pretty. I like the effect. And that's done, and I think that looks so pretty when it catches the light. Now to assemble my card, I used another piece of pattern paper from the Winter Solstice pad. I'm adhering that down to a white card base, and then I'm adding some foam squares behind my die cut, just to pop it up a little bit. I'm going to put that down at the top of my card again. And then I'm using more liquid adhesive to adhere the wreath. I don't need to coat every single pine needle because this is such strong adhesive. I put a little bit too much on and it oozed out of the sides, but it'll dry clear. I'm going to double up on the bows again. And this time it's just going to be a white bow. This will bring out the white of the snowflakes and the white of the card base peeking through. I'm also using some white Nouveau drops to add berries onto the pine needles. This just brightens up the wreath a little bit more as well. I really love that effect. It's so pretty. And then I couldn't stop using the Nouveau drops, so I pulled out my pink ones again and just put them in the corner by the sentiment that says Merry and Bright. I also added some more clear Spectrum Noir over my bow. Now for my two tags. I had such fun creating these. I have this old stamp set in my stash from Hero Arts, and it has these teeny tiny images of different animals. I'm going to stamp them out in the center of these wreaths. I haven't glued the wreath down yet. I'm just using that as a placement of where to stamp. And I'm using some VersaFine Onyx black ink to stamp these out just because it is such a dark, crisp ink. And I'm going to stamp out the little fox on this first one, and this is a piece of craft cardstock. And then I'm going to stamp a snowflake, and I'm going to heat emboss the snowflake with white embossing powder. And I want him to appear as though he's looking at this little, or I should say big, white snowflake. And I can just melt that, and that sure pops off of the craft cardstock. Before I get into the coloring, I'm going to stamp out my second tag too. If you use small images on your tags like this, the coloring goes by really fast. So if you want to make up some cute, quick tags, this is the way to go. Next, I'm pulling out my tin box of Polychromos pencils. I don't have the whole set of these. I believe this is just the set of 36. But sometimes that helps to make the coloring go faster too, because you don't have as many choices. However, I think I still want the whole set someday. I want all the pretty colors. Now I'm using a Copic multiliner to draw in some ground beneath this present and the squirrel. This cardstock that I'm coloring on is from MFT. It's called Primitive Cream Heavyweight cardstock, and it's really pretty because it has all of these little speckles in it. Now on to the next tag. I'm just coloring in my little fox with some reds and browns. And then I'm using a gray to color the end of his tail and his nose and chest. I pulled out my white gel pen to put some snow around this little fox. It adds such a cute element to this little scene. And then I decide to come in with a snowflake stamp to stamp around my squirrel. I'm going to stamp the to and from on the backs of these cards. That from didn't stamp up very well, so I'm going to stamp it again. I penciled in a little dot on the paper in my mini MISTI so I would know exactly where to line up the second tag. This just makes it quick and easy to stamp out. Now I can adhere the wreaths with some more liquid adhesive. I do have pictures of all of my cards that you can see at the end of this video. I put some pretty ribbons on these tags. And it just takes it to another level. Just adds a lot to these tags. I hope you've enjoyed this video and got some inspiration from it. Thanks for watching and clicking that thumbs up button, and for all of your lovely comments. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.